here at Haas Boot Company, we manufacture different types of product for different uses. This is what is a typical cement construction. So EVA midsole, rubber outsole. This has a nylon shank put into the shoe for support. That's one type of construction, and it can be any sole pattern at the bottom. It can be different shapes and patterns of the EVA in the midsole, and there are other materials as well for the midsoles. Pros and cons on this sole, first of all, they tend to be fairly lightweight. Again, depends on the amount of rubber that's put on the bottom. Rubber has a heat resistance to it and an abrasion resistance to it. It does well in different environments. And like I said, it's probably the lightest weight that you can do out there. And again, lots of different patterns on the bottom. So it really depends on the function you use with this. You don't want to use this in a heavy chemical or petrochemical environment, especially. The rubber EVA will separate and break down. So the next process that we do is sometimes called injection, sometimes called direct attach. And we do two different forms of this. One, we do an injected welt. So the PU is put onto the leather upper, directly onto it. And then the rubber sole is later applied to that. So now you have a rubber that is high heat. This bond is very strong. This is great in the oil fields or petrochemical environment. A good rubber, which again, high heat and slip resistant, with the PU gives a great bond to the upper, holds up extremely well. The other way to do a direct attach or injection is 2-density polyurethane. And again, this is shot twice. You'll generally see a seam at the back of the shoe and the front of the shoe. That means it's been injected or direct attached. And again, you can do polyurethane 2-density or polyurethane and rubber. And they can both be, the polyurethane is always injected onto the rubber. That's another form of processing. The last form of processing that we do is called Goodyear welting. And that starts with what's called a blocker sole most often. But the blocker sole, it can be made of rubber, it can be made of polyurethane like this one is, super flexible. And that gets sewn on to the upper in this function. So you will see a welt going around here. And then that gets sewn and glued onto the welt. This is a most durable process, heavily used in the United States. Great for heavy-duty construction, outdoor work. Almost every type of industry works well with Goodyear welting, but it tends to be a little bit heavier. It tends to be a little stiffer. So it just depends on what type of work you're doing on if you decide to choose this process.
What are the benefits to welting versus injection?
Injection, you will always get a very flexible boot. You don't always get that depending on the outsole material. Here we're using PU, so it's a little bit more flexible. If you use rubber on the bottom, it's a little less flexible and can be quite heavy. Again, depends on your environment, where you're working, on what the outsole material is that you need. If you're around heat, welders, machinists, things like that, the PU will melt at about 160 degrees, where rubber will go up to 600 degrees in many cases. So there's quite a variance on the temperature that each material will hold and resist to. The PU is great in chemical and slip resistance. So it just depends on the environment that you're working in on a regular basis.